Hi, my name is Meredith Garcia and I teach in the English department. And today I'm going to talk about collaborative exams, which is a strategy that I tried this semester that I had never done before. But this semester I was teaching English 332, Introduction to Linguistics, which is about sentences and syntax, sentences and phrases. And it's very terminology heavy. It's very different from any other kind of English course my students take. And it has just a lot of information to absorb. And so I thought I would try collaborative exams by the time we got to the end of the semester. So what is a collaborative exam? A collaborative exam requires students to work together to decide on answers or solutions. And it offers some advantages. We know that learning is a social activity, and collaborative exams consider the possibility that the assessment should be social as well. In my English 332 course, students worked in small groups to produce answers to assigned exam questions, and then they presented their answers to the rest of the class for approval. And you can see what that looks like in the folder that I've linked to on the document. There's video of two of my Monday cohort completing their exam and the Wednesday cohort completing their exam, and you can see one example of the exam in there too with the correct answers. How might this work in your course? Is your course right for a collaborative exam? I'll offer some questions to consider and steps to take if you want to try it out. So students work in pairs or small groups to complete an exam. Exam questions are posed in such a way that students need to negotiate and defend their answers. So the real work in preparing this comes at the front end when you alter your exam to make it one where students need to come up with different solutions and then negotiate which parts of each person's answer are correct, are most correct. And they have to talk that through. Exam questions ask students to explain their answer or their process for arriving at an answer. And then students provide their answers to other peer groups for the instructor and the instructor for immediate feedback. So my courses, I split into a Monday cohort and a Wednesday cohort. So they had about 12 students each. I put them in 3 groups. The 3 groups took, I split the exam into 3 versions and they each did their version. And then on the exam day, everyone presented an answer and we talked through whether it was correct or not. So the advantages to this were lowered anxiety. Students were reassured that they could rely on the collective knowledge of the class. It made the group work feel meaningful because they felt like it improved their performance to be able to bounce ideas off of each other. And it helped them understand the material by talking to a peer. And it gave them some real world skills, right? They noted that this structure reflected work situations they were likely to encounter. Student feedback, they wrote things like, it was refreshing to collaborate as I barely knew my peers in more individualized courses. The material also provided great opportunities for peer debate as students could come up with a variety of trees. So they're diagramming trees, sort of like you saw in the little bubble image, and they would often come up with different versions. And so then they had to discuss how to put it together into the best version. The way our group talked still proved our knowledge of the content, but allowed us to work together and collaborate. Knowing that I had a full week to complete the exam and that I was also able to run answers by my peers was helpful and took off a ton of stress. And working together was allowed and even encouraged. And it makes sense because in the real world, we'll always have peers or colleagues to talk about ideas with. The students felt somewhat like I was making a concession to them because I broke the exam into 3 versions and I had them work together and then I had them present, but I didn't feel like I was conceding anything because when I teach a course, I want them to read the text, listen to the lecture, discuss it with each other, practice the material and homework, and then get my immediate feedback. And this kind of assessment just made that immediate feedback and peer discussion a little more prominent in the class than it might have been otherwise. The pros of this strategy: it promotes the kind of learning environment and community that I want. I want students talking about class when they're not in it. I want them practicing the material. I want them checking with other people and collaborating with each other and feeling like we're a learning community that's moving forward together. It can save time on grading, because if you have that grading during one class period where everybody shares answers, maybe 2 class periods if you've got larger sections, or maybe more, maybe even more depending on how you structure it. But it can save time on grading. You do all the process, you provide all the feedback immediately, and then put the grades in the gradebook. As a learning tool, I think it outperforms individual assessment. Rather than have them sort of like take a gamble on true, false, or multiple choice questions, I got to hear them say what they thought the answer was and why they thought it was that answer. And even if their reasoning didn't hold up, that was still useful for me as an instructor to see how they arrived at the answers that they proposed. The cons: it's very different from what students and instructors are used to. You have to spend some time teaching students how to take an exam in this way. It requires a great deal of work on the front end. You've got to go through the exam and think about how these questions can be reframed to be about collective knowledge and debate. And or discussion at least. And you might have to couple it with other measures to satisfy your sense that students have achieved the learning objectives. I had individual conferences with students and lots of homework to draw on. So this wasn't the only thing I was relying on to tell me if they had absorbed the course material. Do you want to try it? If you do, you should identify an assessment in your course that would lend itself to collaboration, and you can start small. You don't have to start with the final exam like I did. Pick something small and think about how to restructure it. You'll have to teach students how to gently correct each other or raise questions that begin productive conversations about answers, and be patient while they get the hang of this, because they're not excited to stand up and say that they think something in their peers' work is off the mark. So you really have to hold their hands through the beginning of that process. Shorten the exam or split it into parts. Students will spend more time on fewer questions, addressing the why and the how of their answers. So even though they won't get 6 opportunities to show if they know how the being verb is functioning in a sentence, the 2 opportunities they get will include an explanation. And then consider how you can provide an opportunity for students to share their answers with other groups and get immediate feedback from you. This really ups the game on the group work, right? Because they know they're going to present it to other people and to me. And so they want to be sure they've got it as clean and correct as they can make it. Thank you for listening to my collaborative exam pitch. I've included a link to a Google folder of materials that includes some recordings of the collaborative exam class and the Google form that we used, or the Google document that we used for the exam, and the longer version of this story and how I came to do it. And if you have questions or you want to talk about how you might do this, hit me up. I'll be working on it over the summer too. Thank you.